Today, as you probably already know, the Associated Student Speakers Program is honored to present General Louis B. Hershey. And let me just make this perfectly clear. General Hershey is no longer with the Selective Service. And it's good we have a live audience. That's good. Since he is no longer with the Selective Service, he does not feel qualified to answer questions about its present policies. Today's topic will be Age Talks with Youth, and a question-answer period will follow. General Hershey was born in Indiana in 1893 and later went to the University of Indiana where he did graduate study. His connection with the Selective Service began in 1936 and he became director in 1941, a position he held until recently when President Nixon made him a White House advisor on manpower mobilization. Right now it is my pleasure to introduce General Louis B. Hershey.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I'm reminded that when King Henry VIII rode into a village one time, the Lord Mayor rode out to make a speech, and at that time there was a braying in the distance, and he, with his sense of humor, said, "One at a time, please." So I will try to yield any amount of time that I can. I am flattered to be here, and I at least feel that I am being welcomed, each in their own way. I am not going to talk very long to you. I'm going to let you ask questions. I knew that would go over big, but and I am always a little embarrassed when somebody perhaps hasn't had a chance to eat and had to come and listen to someone before they can eat. But that's when you're the people that have it at noon, and so at least for that I will not blame myself. I have, I think, the qualification of age. He read you my age. Now, I'm going to say two or three things about what youth has meant to me. Now, you wouldn't believe it, but I was young once. And at that time, I didn't have much to do personally with my age. I was in no way responsible for it, and I have continued throughout life. And therefore, for the last 5 or 6 years, I never could get my name printed without my age after it. I thought it was just a little unfair because I was not in any way responsible for my age, and I still am not. Now, yep. When we kind of restore calm, I will continue, and therefore you got your choice between which you want, and I shall not interfere with the democratic movements of this association. Now, in the first place, I have a great faith in the people of the United States, and that includes the youth. In the first place, I know this technique. You don't need, if you're doing this for me, you needn't continue it because I've had this technique worked a great many times during the last 5 years. The applause technique is a very old one, but that's all right. I don't expect things new. I'm an aged person. But I do have great faith in the people who live in the United States. I have great faith in the youngsters. Now, the youngsters, I happen to have 10, 13 grandchildren, that are somewhere near the age of you people in front of me. So therefore, I'm not completely unaccustomed to having 3 or 4 talking to me at the same time. And I've had a great deal of experience with my family of not being able to finish my sentences. So don't think that you're doing anything new that I haven't already experienced with my grandchildren. But I do have great faith in them. In the first place, they are not near as bad as they think they are at their worst. And they are the ones that are going to take over this country and going to run it, and I hope better than we've been running it. They will take it over when they are responsible enough to run it. I'm sure of that. Now, unfortunately, I'm a little deaf and I miss some of these things that I know I should have a chance to hear because there were things that I really ought to remember. I had the experience at your age of hearing a great many of the things that we at that time were taught not to listen to, and I'm very proud that I've lived long enough to have them become quite the literary thing to do. So therefore, I'm not trying to have anyone feel that they have to do something to sort of shock me, because I'm pretty well beyond it. In the first place, I'm blind and I can't see. In the second, I do have some difficulty in hearing. Now, the questions that perhaps we better go to the questioning period. We seem to have many that are full of questions. And so I believe that we'll give them an opportunity, I hope one at a time, to ask questions, and I hope that each one will extend to the person who's asking the question the same courtesies that we don't always get in trying to answer them.
All right, can we have our first question, please? I'm glad to see you all came prepared with facts. Okay. Do you have a question? Shut your mouth. Go ahead. Go, ask your question. Do you have a question? I'm letting him speak just as General Hershey was allowed to speak. Go ahead.
I probably regret the part that I've had in anything that America had to do to keep this boy in college. But
could we have the next question from this side?
Sir,
Anybody?
Sir, I think you were ignoring the question. The question was, how do you sleep at night knowing that you have been responsible for the organization which has sent not only thousands of American youths to their deaths, but also thousands of Vietnamese children, not just youths, but children and babies?
well, is that the end of the question? As I understand the question, how do I sleep at night? How do I sleep when I have been responsible? Well, now, I've had many tributes paid to me, but I've never had anybody try to tell me that I was running the world in which I had something to do with carrying out an obligation. Would you please be... if the ones who want to ask questions, if they want to let me finish, although it doesn't make a particle of difference, because I know very well that anyone that attributes to me all of the deaths that we've had since history began, I suppose. I don't know why cut it off with Vietnam. And this is flattery that I just simply can't stand. In the first place, I have tried to do my duty, and I would advise you, if you want to run this country, that you try to do yours. It was not a pleasant duty, I can assure you. But on the other hand, I feel that I'm no different having done it than the same people that live by the advantages that this country has.
All right. Do we have another question? From this side, anybody? Right here.
Sir, in the light of your answer to that question, could you please tell us the differences as you see them between yourself and Adolf Eichmann?
The differences between yourself and Adolf Eichmann.
Well, I think probably you're a student of history, and therefore I will not start discussing with you this fellow you're comparing with. I am a little surprised that there is no one in this outfit that has any questions they want to ask except for one reason, and that is to harass the speaker. Now, well, in the first place, this gentleman that he apparently knows about, I've never been associated with.
Next question. Stand up and speak up.
Is it true, sir, that you endorsed the presidency of George Wallace in the last presidential election, and you were prepared to be his running mate?
I'm not so sure exactly what you said, but I can talk to the George Wallace business. In the first place, George Wallace was the governor of one of our states and therefore had the responsibilities of operating the selective service system within his state. After he was out of office, Mrs. Wallace for a time was governor, and during that time she was ill and her husband acted pretty much for her. I had a conference with him for one purpose, and that was to get more of the minorities on local boards, and he put some on. And about all that we got for having done that was somebody accusing me of being his campaign manager, which I was not. I didn't happen to belong. I do not get into politics. I vote, but I didn't happen to vote that ticket, and there's 2 or 3 other tickets I didn't vote. But on the other hand, the things that I dealt with George Wallace about had to do with putting minorities on local boards, and he put them on. And I thought it has been a rather bad disservice to criticize him for the thing he did that I thought was about the best thing he ever did.
Next question. All right. Right over there.
This isn't intended to be a harassment, although it may turn out that way. While you are not responsible for the policies of the draft board as they are now constituted, I was wondering how you feel about the implicit statement in previous and even now in extant draft regulations that if someone is not willing to kill, and if he is not willing to aid in the process of the killing, even if he himself will not carry a gun, i.e., be a medic, be in non-combatant, other non-combatant roles, then he is still obligated to do something which is extremely distasteful, and it is personified as a national service, being the obligation of every good American. Now, anyhow, what I wanted to know was, during your administration of the draft, first, for a long time, there was the requirement that you believe in a Godhead, and that this belief in a Godhead restrict you from your good American duty to kill. Now, then it was revised when it was pointed out that some Americans didn't believe in God, but nonetheless had other religious or quasi-religious convictions. And then those Americans were, if they can make a satisfactory case to their board, were released from having to kill. However, we're required to haul crap pants. Now, finally we come to the third group, in which I find myself a member and have found myself while you were in administration, and that is that I'm a person who does not believe in God or any other religious concoction. And I'm coming to it, Junior. Hang on. But I was wondering how you justify, I mean, there seems to be a judgment implicit in the idea that if you do not believe in God or be a Buddhist or something like that, then you're going to serve because obviously you couldn't conscientiously object to the murder, killing, rape, plunder, blah, 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 that's going on in Vietnam. Now I would like to see justify this process because I happen to think that it's quite unjust. And I happen to object very strongly to murder and burning of kids and the other sort of things. And it's not necessarily a judgment of national policy. I would object to it no matter where we do it. I would have objected to it during World War II. That's
End of question?
End of question, yes. Thank you, sir.
Well, I think that, let me say two or three things. In the first place, there is argument about what the Congress meant when they said that alternate service would only be available to those who had religion. And I don't think there's any question that there's a good ground for debate on what constitutes religion and what does not constitute religion. You may not believe it, and that will be immaterial, but I have had about 30 years in trying to get some adjustment for those individuals who honestly and religiously, because we've never had a law, and I don't know when you're going to get one, that will go farther than religion, because one of the problems now, when this Congress gets on this bill next year, one of the things that's going to be very bad is some of the decisions that's been made by the courts, and that the Congress will be trying to overcome those things, and they're going to be more repressive than they've been before, a thing that I see coming and regret it a great deal. But getting back to what you had referred to, the Congress did put in 1948 the thing which said that a person had to believe in a supreme being. I personally did not agree with that at the time, but remember, maybe it isn't news to you, but I am not and never was the Congress. I was an administrator who was trying to carry out a law. I didn't set religion. Well, okay, you probably have administered quite a number of things. And one of the problems we had was to try, in a country where a great many people believe that the individual who is trying to escape service is trying to escape it by means that are entirely selfish. I don't happen to belong to that group, but lots of people do, and we had them to live with, just the same as they did with a minority, and a very small minority, that were engaged. Remember, before we had any selective service in 1940, you had no alternate service. Now, maybe you don't like what you got, but it's better than nothing, I contend, and I think it's a step in the right direction. Now, getting back to who can take alternate service, you've got to have some guidelines or some rules, or everybody is a little likely to say this is not a good duty. And of course, I realize that you're all against killing people, and don't think I'm in favor of killing people. I'm not even in favor of killing. I'm not in. Well, why are some of you kids cheering on the bombers? Well, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know the answer. But, all right, now if you'll calm down a little bit. Give me equal time. That's all I ask. Give me equal time. When you get quiet, I've got a few more things I want to say on this CO, and if you don't want to hear it, make noise. Because in the first place, I'm not on your payroll in any way. And therefore, if I walk off, no one can do anything to me, because I got myself down here, and I'll get myself away. And I know a lot of people that believe in freedom of speech, but we've got a few here that do not, except when they are making the noise. But we always have them. Your percentage here is smaller than it is most places. I don't want you to feel ashamed of it. But but really, you're a much better audience, as I've seen many places. So don't think that these folks are bothering me. I've got a grandson that can bother me a great deal more than anybody that's been here today. So now getting back to how do you decide, and I think you kids are going to have to decide it someday, and you ought to be thinking about how do you decide who you're going. Now, if you're going to abolish war, fine. You won't have to have anybody killed. No, you can kill them then in the street. Somebody kills with automobiles every year more people than they've killed in Vietnam. That doesn't make it right, but it's so. And the fact that you'd tolerate conditions. You go ahead, finish. I'm sure I'd like to hear the last of that. Now, back to how you judge who should have alternate service if you're going to have it. The Congress has been very insistent that you had to have religion. Now, the Supreme Court in the Steger case said that you did not have to believe in a supreme being. On the other hand, the supreme being is it's a term that could be applied to anybody. Now, in the case of Welch, well, that's true. If you take supreme being all over the world, you'll find a great deal of difference in it. Now, when we got to the Welch case, they decided that the boy behaved like a person that had religion, although he said he didn't have any. And the Supreme Court said, as long as he behaved like a religious person, we'll consider him a religious person. Well, all right, you laugh at the Supreme Court. I'm not the Supreme Court either. That's the second thing. Now, one of the problems you've got. How about who? Oh, we got Nuremberg. Good. I was listening for that. When you don't hear about how about Nuremberg early on, it's a little bit against the audience because normally you hear that early. And now I feel relieved. I know it's the 99% of you didn't ask it, but you got somebody that saved you. Now, so you've got a problem that is not going to be solved here today, but somebody's got to do a lot of thinking on how you are going to let people have alternate service. And whether you call it religion, I have no quarrel with the individual that's sincere, but how do you know what he's sincere about? I suppose some of the people that threw the bombs the day before yesterday were sincere, very sincere. But should they be? Well, yes, and you ought to make them citizens number one because they have made it impossible for anybody else to enjoy the liberties of this country. And they're the very people that are going to get repressive laws. Well, okay.
Next question.
Yeah, no.
Next question from here. Right over there. Is there a microphone? Is there a microphone we can get to this man? You're next.
Well, in the first place, in 1966 and well before, we could justify almost the deferment to anybody who is in college. I'm a little afraid that you're going to get to the place, and I don't want to be a prophet, but I'm afraid you're going to get to the place where the demand is going to be so small that it couldn't possibly disturb the balance of people that have been through college, and then you will have the pleasure of not being channeled, because channeling won't help you. Now, I'm not apologizing at all for saying channeling. Whenever you handle the affairs of a state, you need a lot of different kinds of people. And when you need these kinds of people, one of the ways you get them is by making it possible for them to take the training they need to become what you need. Now, you take, well, all right, laugh if you want to, but one thing about it, most of you have no appreciation that if you want surgeons right now, you'd better be thinking 14 years ahead after the boy graduates from high school, because that takes about how long it does to make a surgeon. Oh, yes, of course. The Vietnam business, we got in down there. I can't claim any credit for getting in there or for getting out. I never was in either the getting in part or the getting out part. Yeah. I wonder if there's anybody here that has a question they'd like to ask that was not for the purpose of either showing what they knew or what the speaker does not know.
We have the girl there with the strong voice. She left, very wise. This guy here. Hold on just a minute. Okay.
Okay. Do I need that? I don't want it. I think that most of us... Can you hear me? Okay. I don't have much to say. See, like, fuck you. Now, I think most of us, wait a minute. I think most of us believe in God to a certain extent. You know, peace, you know? Fuck you. But I want to ask you something, General Hershey. Do you believe in God? That's all, man.
Define your terms, please.
All right.
Well, I'm not fooling about that. The Supreme Court has not been able to define them yet, and I think it's fair to me that he tells me what he's talking about.
All right. Next question. Where's the microphone on this side? All right. Give it to this guy in the blue. Do you have a question, or are you suffering from oral diarrhea? If you have a question, you can speak next. No, sir. No. No. You'll wait your turn or get the hell out. Goodbye. Over here. Mr. Hershey. Question.
Okay, I tried to sit here and word a question that it's really hard for me to restrain myself to not just say what I feel rather than what I'm trying to think about. I want to ask a question, and it is that selective objection on the basis of just pure moral repugnance to U.S. policy has finally been acknowledged as having some value by your and other selective service system. Do you feel that each individual should be allowed to decide what war he or she wants to fight, and are we allowed or are we not allowed to decide when violence is justified?
In the first place, you shouldn't have any interest in what I think. What you need to do is to get the Congress to pass a law. Well, no, I'm answering this question. In the first place, it's entirely a legal question, and therefore anyone who is engaged in operating the selective service system will not be able to do anything about the guy picking his war until you get the Congress to authorize him to pick his war. And when that happens, there's nothing to it. It's an easy operating business. And frankly now, and I'm telling you this honestly, you ought to be putting your pressure on Congress, not on the administrator, because the administrator is the guy that's running the laws. And the thing you want to do is make somebody believe that they ought to have the laws different. But you'll not do it by going around shouting at a bunch of congressmen.
Do you have another part to that? Okay.
Hello? Okay. The selective service system is composed of local boards with more than 50% of the board members over 70 years old.
Well, of course, isn't true. So, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm a liar.
No, just mistaken.
Okay, just mistaken. Okay. Thank you, sir. Do you think this is an equitable composition in light of the fact that more than 50% of the U.S. Viet war dead are under 21?
Well, I don't know anything about the dead coming home or about the board. In the first place, one of the reasons, all right, let's calm down a little bit. You're older than you think you are. You should be acting like my 12-year-old rather than my 6-year-old. Now, again, back to the boards. The boards, one of the reasons that age crept up on them was because they started in 1940 and they were younger people at that time. The next thing that happened was, I'd like to know how many people around here that get to be 25 years old of you will go on a board where you get no pay for doing this and catch the... You'll go on the board? One of the problems of getting people... All right, now, if you believe in free speech, why don't you act that way? No, of course you don't. Of course you don't believe it except when your mouth is open. But getting back, it's very hard to get people to serve on local boards because they get no pay and they get great criticism. I beg your pardon?
All right, let's take a question from further back. Anybody want to ask something? Take that over there, on the left side.
Sir, assuming you believe in the Constitution, does the selective service system constitute involuntary servitude, or does it not?
Well, that's a good, fair question. The Congress has passed laws that have been challenged. No Supreme Court yet has found that inducting people into the armed forces for self-defense was involuntary service. Now, I wouldn't want to guess on what's going to happen in the future. However, I beg your pardon? Who did what? Well, I don't know. Who decides what grade you get in any of your subjects? Generally, the fellow who has the job of it. And self-defense is a legal question. Well, yes, of course, one thing about it, we have our brains, unfortunately, in the wrong place. We do not get it in government, and we have it outside. But one thing about it is a great deal easier for a fellow to disagree. I have a 6-year-old grandchild that knows everything is wrong, but she doesn't know how to fix anything. Yeah. Well, this fellow, now that fellow isn't a pacifist, or he wouldn't be calling on me to shoot my own grandchildren. Yes, I'm willing. Yes, I am a pacifist. I'm willing to fight for peace, which is more than most of you are.
All right. You want?
Oh, some girl down there.
All right. Do you want to hear it?
I don't
want her to get a mic?
She wants to say anything.
You have something to say? You want a mic? Okay. Let's have the next question here. Yellow shirt. Hey, hold it. Just a minute. Just a minute. Okay.
I think a question has been asked of General Hershey, which is valid, and he hasn't answered yet. I'm getting to it. Somebody asked whether you are in favor of the 18-year-old vote, and I don't want the Supreme Court's opinion. I want your opinion.
What's that?
Your opinion on the 18-year-old vote, not the Supreme Court.
On what?
The 18-year-old vote.
Oh, well, I'll give you my own opinion on the 18-year-old. I've been for that since 1914.
Okay, next question. Let's take another one from here. That young man there.
Yeah, a little while ago you said that more people were killed in automobile accidents than in Vietnam. And I want to know, how as a human being, which I assume you are, that you can justify the killing in Vietnam with people getting killed in automobile accidents.
I'm not justifying the killing. I think the killing in Vietnam has been very unfortunate, especially when you look at some of the people they died for. Yeah, you don't like that.
Okay, next question from this side, right over here. The person in the red hat.
Jay, you gotta pass the burrito.
Right here.
Yes, first I would honestly like to make an apology. I have two questions, but I would like to apologize for you. Originally, I think many of us here assumed that persons who we considered murderers could not have a sense of humor. You do. Now I would like to know, do you think that it's just that kids hate you, or is there some particular reason that people have for burning their draft cards in front of you and for heckling you? And secondly, I would like to know how you believe, age speaking to youth, or force speaking to the weak, how campus dissidents and disruptors like myself and the people around here, how we who have to disrupt you because of disruptions you have done should be dealt with. That is, should we be murdered in the streets, should we be put in jails, or should we just be left to rot here?
Now let's see, your oratory went beyond that first question, and I got so interested in what you were saying that I forgot what you asked first. What was it, please? You asked what was that first question?
What happened when you read the draft bill? You just forgot what it was and just signed it?
Well, that isn't the same voice. Was it the same voice?
I have not burned my draft card. I can read you 41185111.
Okay.
However, what I wanted to know was how we would deal with people.
Right. Okay, I'll be glad to answer that. In the first place, let me talk for them first if I were their attorney. They have to show that they're grown up. They have to try to get in front of somebody so that they figure that they're hurting somebody else by the frustration that they themselves feel. And I do not expect people to be against causes. I expect them to be against people. Because, first place, it's so much easier to be mad at a person than it is to be mad at a cause, because you don't generally have enough sense to know what a cause is. So, okay, now you've been... You know, I couldn't go out 25 or 30 years ago, probably, and tell people that I was among a bunch of intellectuals where things went on as they've gone on today. But I'm accustomed to it, so I'll go on now with the problem of the fact that the individual, when he wants to be against something, would like to be against something just as big as he possibly could. He'd like to insult and hurt somebody because he's frustrated. And after all, that was one of the... Now, when I get through, I'm sure they'll give you a chance. But if your teammates will, your teammates seem to be... You haven't organized too well. The gang here should have talked one at a time. So therefore, I generally thought that it was frustration in one respect and a desire to try to be against something. And I know what it is to be against something. We've all been against things most of our life. Now, the second thing you talked about, I think, had to do with this responsibility of killing. And did it or didn't it? Well, I don't know. There's about 5% of your audience is a little confusing. I'm sure they're confused themselves. What is it?
He wants to know if there should be killing in the streets.
Yeah.
That was his question.
Yeah, it was what?
Whether there should be killing in the streets and things like that.
Yeah.
Want to take the next question?
Yeah.
All right, next question. Right over here.
Yeah, I'd like to know how you can criticize like the bombings on campus, and say that this is an act of violence, and then at the same time say, well, we're killing people in Vietnam and Korea, and it the excuse like Nixon everybody gives is for peace and it's for our country. I'd just like to add that we're also fighting for our country too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the declaration of somebody who believes it, and I don't know of any reason why I should take exception to it. In the first place, I don't know why. I don't know as I was the main one that criticized the campuses. The campuses, I happen to be a trustee. All right. If there's anything new you'd say, it would be very interesting. But the same size of racket, if I only thought that 50% of you were having some part in this, in fact, I almost hope you will, because I think it's unfair to get you in here, maybe with the idea you'd think that there was something that I knew that I could tell you, and then be prevented totally from doing it. Okay, I heard you before. So therefore, I don't know just what our answer is, because one of the things we've got here now is one of the reasons the democracy isn't going to work, because some people who are taking all the benefits want to keep their mouths shut while the other people bring them to them.
Right there.
Moving on? Yeah, all right. I'd like to, I'm thinking, I'm looking at you, and like you're death personified. And I want you to listen to me, because this is it's a very serious thing, because I don't want to talk to you because you're in the past, and we're here, and we're now, and we're alive. And the trip is that, you've participated, we all know, in the killing over 40 years of millions of people, millions of third world people. You are a good German, and I don't think that you're the perpetrator of all the evils in the world, but you helped, So it's just an understood thing, sir, and I want you to understand that everybody here is so mad at you that if they saw you on the street and they didn't have just respect for your age and knowing that things are going to happen naturally, they'd rip you off. But you see, the trip is that you're too old, and I can't take you too seriously, but you've really killed people. I mean, you really have, and I think that, and I think I'm rational. And I think I understand, and I kind of have pity because you can't make sense of what I'm saying right now. But people here make sense,
well,
and we really got to get together. I'm not talking to you now. Wait, now you talk about respect. Now you listen.
That's
true.
I think that we ought to get down to business. If anybody's got any questions they want to
That's
ask,
what
and
I-
nobody has. Now, wait a minute. You harassed all the time. You think you're smart. You think you're grown up. But on the other hand, if there's anybody here that's got anything they'd like to ask to find out something, I'd like to give that person a chance. But otherwise, I don't think I have to come 3,000 miles to find people that have no manners. I can find them a great deal closer.
All right. Okay, let's try and get a question this time instead of a speech. You have a question? All right. Hold on just a minute. We'll get a mic to you. Hold on. We have a question here from the front row. You'll get your chance. Hold on.
How
Here
do you justify the channeling policies of Selective Service System?
How do you justify this?
What kind of
channeling?
Channeling.
Channeling
Policy.
Well, in the first place, you don't have to worry about that because I'm out and they don't channel anymore. Now, oh, do they? Do they? I thought everything has stopped. I thought, why didn't the killing stop when I left the office? To hear you rationalists, you people that apparently had a lot of logic and philosophy, tell me about why have I been blamed? Now, the channeling business, I think is very easily justified because in the first place, you do not defer anybody unless they're doing or getting ready to do something in national interest. And if you people aren't doing things in national interest, then you ought to probably not be channeling. But the channeling business, as I understood it, went out with me.
All right, now we
You
had...
at least hear that, why don't you?
We had a question over here. Let's take the man in the red shirt there, a little further back. Do you have a question?
Yeah, as soon as
All right,
I get
speak.
seated. My question is, Mr. Hershey, why did President Kennedy and President Johnson consider you sufficiently competent to remain in service under them and not fire you?
I think that's a good question, and if you can answer, I don't know the answer. I think maybe one reason they didn't know how to get somebody to take my place.
All right. We have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Let's have a question. I'd like to have one question before I leave.
All right.
I'd like to have something besides harassment.
All right. We'll make this. This will be the final question then. We'll have it. A few more years in college and you'll find out. Let's take the question from the man right here, in striped shirt. Last question.
In your opinion, what is the role of the administrator in determining whether or not he should keep functioning when things are questioned morally? You alluded to the Congress being the only way to solve this problem, and in light of our rationale at Nuremberg, does the administrator have a role in determining that?
Well, in the first place, you brought up Nuremberg, which is very good, except for the fact that it was an international business, which I don't think anything in America has followed the precedent of Nuremberg. Now, second place is, all right, now you know all about things. Ask the youth, for they're the ones that know. Now, back to the question of what does an administrator do? Does he violate the law in order to have the things go the way he wants them? Or if he's an administrator, does he carry out the law? One of the things that, well, how do you get... This would be a good place for us to have a little study on how do you teach manners.
All right, we'll take some more questions.
I'm not going to run off. It's noon, I think. Maybe we're there. But we are not 1 o'clock. Right, okay.
All right, let's take the question from a young lady here. Okay.
Okay, General Hershey, I wanted to know about an all-volunteer army. Why hasn't it been tried? I think that if the youth were willing to serve and if they were paid in proportion to domestic wages, I think that they would be willing to serve in a volunteer army if they had a just cause. Why didn't you try that?
If you... go ahead. Did you get through? The volunteer army is what we're talking about. Of course, the first place we say we never had a voluntary army because we never had anything else. except for 2 or 3 periods of our history. It is true that since 1940 we have not had a voluntary army. But my service of some 30 years was all in volunteers. I'll tell you probably the big reason why they don't have a volunteer army. How many people here, if they opened the volunteer only, have nobody drafted at all? How many people here that are not a girl would enlist? Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the reason they have. That's the reason they don't have a volunteer army.
Want to take another one?
That's the kind of if you'll ask some questions like that.
Oh, well, you'll get one or two like that.
All right, let's have a question. Right over there. Right over there. The guy behind, right there. That's it. Okay.
Okay, sir, you said that you have faith in America's youth. America's youth is against the Vietnam War. Look at all the gooks in this room. We don't want to kill Vietnamese people. Why do you send us to fight a war the youth don't believe in, particularly the educated youth? Those who know that Vietnam War was started by us. It was ended in Geneva, and we started it again.
Well, when you get to the end of your question, will you stop your oration, please? I'll try to answer. In the first place, I do not believe that you people here in this room, the ones that I'm hearing, are representative of the America that I know. I know a lot. And I have some reservation. Will we have a song now? I would also... One of the things about it, the youth of America are not represented necessarily by the people in this room. It just happens that millions of these youth have gone. Now, they weren't as smart as you think you are. But you're the one that are going to try to live in a future world that they made possible. And maybe sometime you'll get old enough that you will have some worry about it.
All right, we're going to have to call it here. Thanks for showing up. And good luck.